Hello, everyone. Welcome to today's webinar. We have a very special guest today, so I would suggest to wait a couple of minutes before we actually kick things off to let more people join.
And guys, don't be shy. Switch on your camera if possible, right? It's always good to see the faces, and then I will expect to have some kind of discussion about data lineage.
Actually, not sure if we have enabled cameras for today's call. Let me quickly check that.
Okay, let's double check, right? It's always better to speak to the people than just to the wall.
Let me see if I can update settings on the fly, actually. By the way, Katarzyna, nice to meet you. It's been a long time.
Hi, Kasia.
So I'm allowing camera and microphone for attendees. Okay. Let's see if it works. Okay, saving the settings.
It seems that you removed, let's say, this blocking stuff. That's fine. So if someone would like to switch on camera, that's fine. If not, it's perfectly fine as well. So no problem.
Great. Yeah, I guess we could start that point. All right. So hello everyone again. Happy to see you all on today's webinar, where our amazing speaker will talk you through some cool stuff related to data lineage. So Piotr is president of DAMA Poland chapter, and he is also a head of data governance and Luminor Group. And I'm pretty sure he has a lot of insights related to not only data lineage, but the data governance in general. So today's webinar will be dedicated to data lineage. So yeah, in case you would like to have any questions, feel free to use our Q&A session, our chat, or just raise your hands. Today's webinar will be recorded, so we'll share the recording after that event with all of you. And I do hope you find it useful. With that, I will pass it over to Piotr and kick things off. So Piotr, the stage is yours.
Yeah, so guys, thank you very much. So I said, I have been working with data management, data governance for the last 20 years in many companies, right? But I really, my beloved topic is, let's say, the data lineage, right? Because for me, it's like the essence of everything, right? So if you want to understand the data, we need to be able to track the data from the source to the target, right? And as you know, guys, so this is not only, let's say, the business requirements, right? We have a lot of regulatory requirements that currently required from us that we as the business, not only IT, right, but the business especially, are able to provide some kind of information about from where the data is coming from and where the data is heading, right? And this is really critical. But before I will, let's say, switch into the presentation, I'm wondering, guys, who is from the financial sector and who is from non-financial sector, right? I'm asking because it is easier to implement, let's say, the lineage within the financial sector, right? Because I say this is heavily regulated stuff, and outside the financial sector is like we would like to have, right? But sometimes happen that yes, we would like to have, but we don't know how to implement that stuff, right? From the scratch or track everything from the source to the target. So, guys, who is from finance sector? The first questions. Don't afraid to raise the hand or whatever. Yeah, okay, Michał, superb. And Anna, okay. Who else? Pavel, okay, not so bad. So I assume that the other guys are from non-financial sector, right? Okay, but let's say, so if you would like to make this session interactive, just raise the hand, ask the questions, whatever, right? So we are here to answer your any questions. I would like to as well to hear your feedback, right? And then to have some kind of discussion about the data lineage and your experience, right? Because, you know, so this data lineage experience is very in different companies. In some companies, yes, there is a lot of stuff in place, especially where you have the modern technology. But if your company based on some kind of legacy stuff, it's not so funny anymore, right? So that's why I'm asking about this financial sector, because mostly financial sector is a little bit behind, let's say, the technology, but obviously it depends, right? So if you don't mind, I will share the screen and wondering if you have any question at the beginning or some thoughts. If this is not the case, so I think we can go to the presentations. I would like to, let's say, squeeze this presentation into 15, 20 minutes. We'll see what happens. As I say, this depends on your activities as well. If you have more questions, then we can extend the session. If there will be no questions, so then I'm gonna to go through the slide smoothly, I hope. So let's start from the agenda, right? So the data lineage. So I would like to tell you today about the data lineage. What is the data lineage? I would like to tell you why the data lineage can be considered like the constellation, galaxy, or the universe. So, and by the way, this is why I call, and even Luminor when I'm working now, we call this data governance not just the data governance, but we call that stuff, this unit, this whole area, data governance universe, right? Then I would like to tell you a little bit about the hierarchies of the data lineage and the levels of data lineage, right? And so it's set up in that way because I would like to tell you the story at the end, that like the kind of storytelling that we start from kind of requirements, how to build that stuff. And then we have this data governance, let's say all these activities, data governance roadmap, data governance universe activities. And at the end, we land as the product. And last but not least, I apologize if this content will be quite heavy because so this is not the standard presentation where we have some bullet points, but I always try to shed a bit more light and details, right? Because it's easy to pull the bullet points like what is the data lineage, why we need the data lineage, so what, but how? It's always, let's say, a big question mark for many companies and the colleagues, right? So I'll always try to put a lot of, let's say, heavy stuff inside the deck. So if you could unmute, yeah. So I always try to put a lot of heavy stuff into the deck, but then I expect some kind of questions. Okay, if it is not transparent, I'm more than happy to provide more details, as this is something what we are doing currently, right? So everything starts from, let's say, this 4 data governance capabilities, right? We can call that stuff in different way in the companies. Some companies may set up that stuff in different way, right? But even from the DAMA perspective, we have at least these 3 main components which support all these DAMA areas, right? So we need to have the data catalog in place, right? Because we need to, let's say, manage our metadata. We need to have some kind of inventory where we are going to put the definitions, ownerships, systems, CDAs, reports, regulatory stuff, some kind of procedures. So everything may go to the data catalog. Then obviously we need to have the data quality, right? So this is nothing fancy for you, probably because this is something what you run every day. And then we need to have the data lineage. And the data lineage, as mentioned, so this is about how to track the flow from the source to the target. So sometimes we call that stuff data flow, sometimes we call that stuff data lineage. And last but not least, we have the data security. Again, this can be data security, this can be data disposal, this can be, honestly speaking, everything, right? But this is more or less to nail down all requirements coming from GDPR, right? So from GDPR. And all the pillars, we call that stuff pillars as well. So like the governance pillars, quality pillars, operational pillars, and data security pillars must work together to assure that at the end we have the full data lineage and we understand the data, right? Because even if we identify some data quality issue, right? So then to track the source for the data quality issue, you need to have the lineage because you need to follow upstream or downstreams. If you have identified the data quality issue against some kind of attributes in data warehouse, still you need the data catalog because you need to understand what this, let's say, technical metadata means, right, from business perspective. And last but not least, you need to have this all data security stuff in place, right, because this is linked to Geneva area, because our tables, attributes, schema, data warehouse, processes, so everything must be secured. And obviously we need to know where all these attributes sit, right? So for example, within GDPR, we have Article 17 saying that we have the right to be forgotten, but how to be forgotten or how to execute the right if we don't know where the data sits, right? So this is why data lineage may help us to unpack everything what is necessary to address the GDPR topic as well. And by the way, because this is, let's say, the complex, we have these 4 pillars. We call that stuff data governance universe because this is huge. So just simplifying the story at the beginning. So far, so good?
Amazing.
Good. Okay, so then some simple slide was data lineage, right? So you can Google, you'll find different definitions, right? So the one of the definitions that is that the data lineage pathway along which data moves from its point to the origin, its point of usage, right? So just simply, we need to double check and we'll be able to understand from which system or the process the data flows through the data warehouse, some kind of ETL processes, and at the end, which report, KPI, or model is impacted by potential data quality issue or some kind of data breach incident coming from data security or data privacy. So this is just, as on the picture, just to be able to track what happened with the data within the data lifecycle, right? And obviously, we need the data lineage because data lineage increase our understanding of the IT landscape. And not only again from the IT perspective, but from the business perspective, right? So, and here will be my question, right? So if you have data lineage in place, you have the data lineage in place from IT perspective or from the business perspective, or you try to address the challenge from both. And I'm not sure, guys, so if you can, let's say, unmute yourself or this is blocked. If this is blocked, then obviously I will not ask the question, right? But if you would like to share with some kind of insights, that would be great. Or Oleg, do you have any experience with data lineage? How it looks on your side from your experience, Maxim?
So when we work with our clients, and I'm coming from the consultancy, technical consultancy background, we typically approach it holistically from both technical and business perspective, because there is technical lineage, obviously, where you track each separate field, for example, on a table level, but there is also business lineage, which is more like aligned with the business process view
Exactly.
of the data.
Exactly. Yeah, that is the goal, right? So, and at the beginning, I asked about them who is from finance sector, right? Because we have a lot of regulations, right? This BCBS 239, right? Which was set up like almost 10 years ago, and still it's not nailed down by many companies, right? And companies don't understand what happened with data, although the regulation was set up 10 years ago, right? And this regulation stipulates that each and every, let's say, for example, financial company must understand what happened with data, right? So this is why I say that it's easier to implement within this financial sector than outside financial sector, the lineage. But anyway, both areas, financial and non-financial, may, let's say, leverage from the lineage, because then, understanding how the data move across the whole IT landscape, right? Even support some kind of change management on transformation or migration data from one system to the another one, right? So this is not like the Excel, but you can see everything on the one page. But this is something what I'm gonna let's say, present the next slide. Okay, so let's move forward. Now, data governance universe. So I mentioned that for me, it's like this data lineage can be compared to the constellation, galaxy, or universe, right? And why? Because, so from, let's say, if you look into the stars, you see the constellations. So it can be like the data assets, like the stars or some kind of galaxies, right? Then you have the galaxies, and the galaxies can be like the data domains, because collect all these data assets in more, let's say, granular way. So you can imagine that we have like the finance domain, credit risk domain, and then we have a lot of the system, a lot of the tables, a lot of attributes, some kind of processes, procedures, right? So it must be aggregated together as the one of the domain. And then we have this data IT ecosystem, like the universe, right? Where we have everything in one place, right? So we have the galaxies, we have the data, we have the flows, the galaxies are linked together with the Milky Way. So this is kind of nice metaphor how to explain the lineage to the business and how we can link dots together and how it is critical, right? Because so it seems that from user perspective, right? So we see just one star or some kind of, I don't know, one element here, but at the end, if something happened, right, this may have the impact on the whole universe, right? So this is why we call that stuff Illuminor data governance universe. And by the way, this is why I call that stuff in that way. So, and all this universe, the mentioned, must be supported by the business processes, right? Because everything starts from the business processes. I don't know how it looks in your companies, right? But if we don't understand processes, then we don't understand the data. Because, for example, if we have the process like customer onboarding, right? The process use dedicated systems, and within the system or process, we use dedicated attributes, so fields, right? And if we don't have the process in place, then even if we find some kind of data quality issue in the end of the reporting stage, then to fix the issue, we don't know how to fix the issue because there's no process. We don't know who should fix the issue. So this is the challenge, right? So this is why the business process like underpin everything what sits under within this data governance universe. And as we know, we have structured and unstructured data, right? So both these areas comes into the universe as well. And to address all these challenges, we need to have some kind of data discovery and observability, right? So this is like we have the hub or the others, let's say, telescopes to observe all of the data governance universe. And within the data management area, we use maybe not the telescopes, but we use some kind of tools, right? Just to discover, observe, catalog the information, right? So this is kind of nice metaphor between, let's say, our data management area and astronomy, at least from my point of view. Yeah. Any comments, questions? Is that clear? Makes sense for you guys, Maxim? Yeah, like, super. Then obviously, why, as I started to mention, why does data lineage may help us, right? So the first, let's say, the core capabilities that we can better make this data quality stuff, right? So we have something what we may call root cause analysis. And obviously to make the root cause analysis, sometimes we need, we track the data up downstream to understand the source of the data, right? Most it's happened that you have the Snowflake or some kind of data warehouse Oracle. You try to track some kind of processes. You try to unpack the SQL, see how the data are aggregated, right? But this is time consuming. And we can imagine that if the data warehouse is huge or the data quality issue is complex, right? This means that comes from different sources. We have a lot of aggregations. So for example, in the financial sector, we calculate some kind of ratings, customers rating, right? If you want to grant the loan for each and every customer, the rating is calculated. That is really complex, right? So this data lineage may help us to unpack everything within a few seconds against few hours when we try to unpack each and every SQL or procedure one by one, right? So you can get everything on the one picture and this speed up activities. The other story is change management, right? So currently, a lot of companies, when try to make the change management, right, the companies do that stuff in that way that they log requirement into the Jira, they put something in the Confluence page, then they put something into a PowerPoint, for example, whatever, right? They keep that stuff in the email, and at the end, the data engineer or the PMO guys trying to link all the dots together, open the sprints, and manage the stuff in proper way. It's still fine, but all this information stays in the Jira, not on the lineage, right? On data. At the end, we just see the output of, let's say, the change management process in data warehouse, but sometimes it's hard even then come back in 3 months and see what was before the change, right? So if you want to see what happened before the change, then you need to again jump to the Jira, you need to jump to Confluence page and track some kind of changes, or even just to understand from where the changes comes from. So data lineage may help us to understand the change, and having like something in Git in place, right? You can just switch the views, right? So for example, I can ask, please show me the data structure before the change, or then please show me the data structure after the change, right? And you can even link that stuff, the lineage, to the business requirements. So this is the next key aspects of data lineage. And last but not least, it may help with data transformation, right? Because if you understand the data, the flows between not only the tables, but between the systems, so you understand all the ETLs and you have everything on the one page, then if you want to get some system, if you want to get rid some system due to legacy stuff, right? So for example, you have old CRM systems and you want to implement some kind of new Salesforce one, right? You need to make this migration. And sometimes happen that way that people just have the Excel or many Excel. So when people try to link, let's say, create some kind of links between the legacy stuff and the new one, and everything's managed in Excel. What is time consuming? So again, so Lineage can allow you to make this data transformation and address the transformation through the change management on data lineage as well. I know that currently it may seem a little bit blur, but on the next slide, I will try to explain how this can be done, right? This is just a message that we may use the data lineage at least for these 3 critical areas, which I believe we are struggling every day. Yep, Maxim?
My question is, can we consider data lineage as more bigger than just data inventory, for example, or data classification as part of data line lineage?
Yes, so on the lineage, we should have everything. So you should see the subsystems, ETLs, transformations, unpacked all data warehouse. Then this data warehouse obviously at the end generates some kind of input like the product, whatever KPIs that are used by the reports. So the lineage is like from the source, when source the process, systems, data, then you end up within this business stuff. So KPIs, reports, and models. And then on the top of that, when you have the flow, you can put data classifications, PIIs, CD marks, ownership. So everything what you need to assure that this data landscape will be unpacked and transparent. Obviously, it is not easy to do, right? It is something what can be done within 1-2 months, right? It is like the journey. So this is why the beginning I mentioned that we should have data governance roadmap in place, because roadmap delivers some kind of key components which must be in place and maybe currently are missing in your company, right? And if something is missing, that you can deliver and link the dots, right? So you need to close the gap first and then build the lineage. Yeah, but yes, definitely. Oleg?
Thank you.
Hey, Piotr, what do you think about benefits of data lineage in terms of helping organizations to migrate their data environments? For example, imagine like I like seen these cases a couple of times where people struggled to identify data dependencies, for example. And I thought, well, that's where data lineage could help, right? So when you know where data is coming from and where it goes to, it's a lot easier and faster. You can migrate the data pipelines, data sets. What do you think about it?
Exactly. So this is why I say that in many companies, people have the Excels. In one Excel, they have the legacy system, then they have new systems, and in that Excel, they're trying to make the match, right? So before you make the migration, you need to you need to double check everything that this match fit to the purpose, right? The same logic in place. You have the same data structure or data types in both databases to avoid situation that you will move the, I don't know, numeric value into text field or something like this, right? Because it may generate some kind of issues. So definitely yes. Yeah. And I will try to show you in the future, on the next slides, how this can be nailed down. But yeah, so this is key, at least for us and for me, key areas that can be reused as data lineage kind of even MVP, right? If you like to run some kind of data lineage exercise in your own company, you can pick up one of the topic and try to address an MVP. But obviously, the first one is the easiest one to address. The last one is the most complex one because you need to have everything in place. Yeah. Okay. Another questions? So as said, I'm trying to make some kind of storytelling, and I hope I'm doing that stuff in right way. So now we are gonna to go touch a little bit more details. And this is what happened when we don't have this constellation galaxies on universe in place, right? So as you see from the data governance perspective, right? So there was some kind of action in the past when the biggest bank got a really huge fine because the data governance was not implemented. And obviously data governance in that case, that these companies didn't understand what happened with the data, right? So if they don't understand what happened with the data, it means that they don't have the data lineage. Just to be honest, right? It's not about that I don't have the catalog or I don't have the data quality issues or data quality tool. This is just about that, Oleg, you say that if we migrate something or we want to migrate, we don't understand what we are migrating. And sometimes we migrate something and then we cause some kind of serious issues that impact the customer. So for example, we switch off the online banking system. Yeah, because migration was done wrong way. So this is what happened in City, as remember, and the same HBC, right, and the same in Morgan Stanley. In the past, they just tried to migrate something, and this migration was not so successful as they expect. There was the impact of the customers, a lot of, let's say, complaints, and we are not talking like 100 customers, or there's thousands or hundreds of thousands customers impacted by the change. So they got defined. The other story is that, as mentioned before, right, from GDPR perspective, we have this right to be forgotten, and how to address this article again if we don't understand when we need to remove the data. Yeah, so this is an example from the Marriott that the Marriott wasn't able to remove data from the systems, right? But this is just one of the example. There's hundreds of examples. There's even few dedicated pages when you can track, let's say, the fines, a lot of them, right? But everything, both areas are related to data lineage. So, and by the way, this is why I'm asking, I ask as well, who is from financial or non-financial sector, right? Because the first box is financial one. The second one is not financial one because this is hotel. And something what you see on the right side, right? This is real view from the company. This is the link of, this is the map of all systems and the links between those systems. So Oleg, now, as you said, you can imagine that you want to remove something from these puzzles, and if you're blind, you can really harm everything.
That's what I was talking about, exactly.
And yeah, and this is linked to these two issues, right? So you can imagine that this is, let's say, let's assume that this is city IT landscape map, and someone has had some kind of crazy idea to remove something from this puzzle, right? And then shit happened because they didn't understand what happened here. But by the way, this is not HGPC, this is not the city, this is one of other companies, but you'll see, so it is like 1,400 system in scope, 100 countries, 6,000 interfaces without EUC. EUC, I don't know, do you know the abbreviation? EUC is end user computing tool, right? So this is something what is used by the business, not supported by IT, but make huge impact on the company itself, right? So in banking sector or non-banking sector, it can be kind of model, right? Which is calculated.
The name is Shadow IT.
Oh, shadow IT. Yeah, exactly. It can be shadow IT, right? But the story is that at the end, IT don't care about that stuff, right? I always say that I don't care. This is not my responsibility. And the business must be responsible. But the problem is that within this Excel, there's a lot of critical information which may then impact even the turnover or some kind of company or financial outcomes, right? And you can imagine that there is the Oleg, for example. Oleg forget to press the button, or Oleg just take the Excel with him, changing the job, right? And then the company is in the problem. So I'm just talking about that stuff because this is just IT landscape, and if you put on that stuff some kind of EUCs that we use in the companies, it's become really massive stuff. Yeah. Questions, comments? And as you see, so it is like the IT landscape universe, so data governance universe. And by the way, I call that stuff Death Star, by the way, from the Star Wars as well, right? Because it looks like Death Star. And there's R2D2, by the way. So going into a little bit more details, right? So I mentioned that the data lineage may have some kind of hierarchy, right? So this is the hierarchy of data lineage. And obviously, we as the data governance guys or data management, right? We need to cooperate with not only, let's say, with the IT teams, right? But we need to cooperate with business. So this business process guys or business regulation guys, but we need to cooperate with data architecture guys as well, right? Because some of the elements come from the business, the other elements come from the IT, and the other elements comes from architecture stuff, right? So as you see, so the first level, at least from my point of view, right? So this, let's say, how I'm trying always to understand and tackle down everything, is to be sure that we understand the business processes. This is level one, right? And in many companies, we have the business processes kept in Excel, but in many companies, there is kind of dedicated BPM solutions, so business process management tool, where you put the processes and link the processes, right? And this is critical because, as tried to explain a few minutes ago, business processes input serve as the input to the data, right, to the system. So this is the first step if you want to understand the data. Then the second level is the application services interfaces level. So it means that, for example, you can look into the ServiceNow if you use this kind of tool in place, right? Because in ServiceNow, this is a CMDB repository. We should keep all the systems, interfaces, services in one place, right? So the second lineage. Then we may have the data entity, right? And data entity is like the grouping the data in the proper way. And this is something what should be taken from data architecture area, right? So it's like employee data, it can be risk data, it can be financial data, right? So just kind of grouping elements. Then we may go to the critical data elements, right? So critical data elements, this is like the attributes which may impact significantly our business operation, right? So as I say, it can be kind of attributes that we use to calculate the models. It can be kind of attribute which is used to calculate financial outcomes, right? It's mean that we don't need to have all attributes from systems, but may happen that in your system there's one attribute which if will be removed or something will be wrong with that particular attribute. I mean, for example, data will be corrupt, right? Then there will be huge impact on your reporting, right? So these critical data elements. And then obviously you need to stitch these critical data elements, these attributes with transformations. So this is like what you said, right? We need to understand the complex logic, how the data are moving from one space to another one. And level 6, this is something what would be good to have the lineage for everything, right? So you have the system, application, processes, attributes, everything linked together through ETL stuff, linked with the data domains. So this is like the full lineage. And saying that, we may have the vertical data lineage, so this vertical, let's say, logic, or we may have this horizontal lineage, right? So horizontal lineage is something what we understand, right? So this is like the systems, integration, usage, and some kind of EUCs report or processes, right? So this is the simplest stuff that is easy to explain. And on the lineage, as Maxim, you asked the question, right? So how to treat data lineage? So in that case, as you see, the data is like the vehicle, just grab all the information together, and then we use the metadata coming from different corners. This is just example, and we stitch this metadata with technical metadata. So this is like the business metadata. We stitch with technical metadata, right? And technical metadata, this is just this pure rough data coming from the source system, tables, attributes, schemas. And then you can link that stuff with real business metadata, right? To make this data meaningful. Okay, so far so good? Makes sense? Yeah, Maxim?
A question, no, just comment that as far as understood this, from level 1 to level 4, it is more like statical information, static, and for transformations, it is more dynamic, like flows. We describe flows of data from all these elements above.
Yep. In theory, yes, but yes. We can treat that stuff in that way, but obviously each level here is like moving beast, right? So we have the business processes. Business processes change every day. You have the system application interfaces. It is changing every day. So maybe only the data entity is not so, let's say, dynamic, right? Because if you set some kind of employee data grouping, it stays for the next few years, right? So if you don't need to change that stuff quickly. Critical data elements can be changed quite quickly as well, because you introduce new product, new reports. So this is dynamic as well. But yes, so if you want to set up some kind of, if you want to explain that stuff in less complex way, we can say that yes, this level 1 and 4 is more or less static, because we just grab information from different corners. But these transformations, it is like the change management. It happens every day. These elements may happen every week, but this element happens, honestly speaking, every day. Yeah. So this is it is why it is hard to keep that under control. Yeah, you're welcome. Any other questions, guys?
That's a great model. Actually, one of the best ones I've seen in terms of splitting by different levels of granularity for data lineage. My kind of 2 cents here would be to probably, I'm not sure if you're going to mention this during your presentation. There's a concept of dividing data for to like backward data lineage and forward data lineage.
So you probably mean downstream and upstream, right?
Yeah,
just to be sure that you're talking about the
sometimes.
same. Okay, so people call that stuff different ways. So I use
Yeah, upstream,
downstream, upstream.
downstream, forward, backward, which are
Yeah,
like pretty much same data lineage, but used for slightly different purposes. So if you're about to do some root cause analysis or change impact analysis, you might want to use backward lineage to like basically identify the upstream sources
yeah,
of data. But if you would like to have like a business impact of your change to be evaluated, you would use forward data lineage to understand
exactly.
where
Yeah.
downstream your data
So
is going
that
to be
part,
used.
right? So for example,
Yeah,
let's assume that we have data quality issue on this ETL level, right? So
what
this
would be
is
the downstream
downstream.
impact?
Yeah, so this is downstream, this is upstream, right? In that case.
Yeah,
Or
exactly.
backward or forward, whatever we call that stuff, right? So
Yeah,
this is why I say that sometimes it's tricky to be on the same page, but once, let's say, we are using the same definition, it's easier to understand the complexity. And by the way, this is complex, right? Because it encapsulates everything what we have in the DAMA wheel. Each and every element, models, architecture, data quality, metadata, data lineage, documentation. So everything what we have in DAMA, I could put even on the middle, the DAMA wheel, and DAMA will fit to that stuff. There will be one problem with the DAMA, right? Because if you look in the DAMA book, you will not find nothing about the processes. So personally, I believe that is the gap.
yeah, they buried deep in the data architecture. So they mentioned that business process architecture is important when you define your data architecture, but
Yeah,
that's not something explicitly mentioned in the DM book. And I do hope they fix this actually,
yeah,
because
and
like
for me and
business
for us, I
business
believe, right?
architecture is one of the key drivers to data
Yes,
architecture and data
yes.
management in general.
But processes are the input. So this is why for me this is level 1, right? Yeah. Okay, so far so good. Just looking at time, right? So still 20 minutes left, so we'd like to move forward. Okay. And now we can start the fun. Because this is the whole landscape, why it is so complex and how to build the lineage from high level perspective, right? And I mentioned about a lot of elements that we need to have the lineage, and now all these elements you have on that page, link it together. Obviously, it is not like it exactly looks like this, but yeah, so more or less I try to link dots just to simplify everything, right? So as said, so we have like the 4 elements, and again, we can even link that stuff to them as well if you wish, right? So we have the data architecture and IT landscape, right? So we have CMDB, so ServiceNow, right? We have the models and we have the systems. So this key requisite that we need to build this level 2 lineage, level 3, presented on previous slide. Then we have something what is quite fancy now on the market, right? So we call that stuff data fabric, but we can call it like just B solutions, whatever, right? But people now try to call that everything data fabric or want to go in AI, so it's fine. So for us, let's say the data fabric is that we have this data quality tool. So this one at the beginning, I mentioned about this data quality pillar. Then we have data catalog. So this data catalog and data governance pillars. Then we have data lineage. So this is this data operational pillar at the beginning. Then we need to have the data lake or data warehouse as the key component inside the organizations which aggregate the data, right? So I Oleg now referring to this backwards and forwards, right? Because this is always the heart of the company where we try to build the product and all this magic happen on business IT side. And obviously master data management, right? So in some companies, master data management exists, in some companies not exist, but this is kind of key components that should be taken into account to assure some kind of capabilities to build the data lineage in the future, okay? And then the next level is this business one, right? So I mentioned about this, you mentioned, Oleg, even about this taxonomy, right? Business taxonomy. So this is business architecture taxonomy. We need to speak between the business and IT in the same language, right? We use the same domain, subdomains, data entities, so level 4 from the data lineage, right? And at the end, we have the same understanding of the models, right? Conceptual, logic, and physical. Then we need to have kind of regulatory repository. And the regulatory repository, it means that in company, we have the policies, procedures, manuals, keep in one place. This is critical because these regulations are linked to the business processes, right? Because if we build the process based on the regulations. So regulations or the documentation says that we need to have, for example, the process which will support customer onboarding, right? And then we have the process which explains how we onboard these customers. So level 1, Lineage. Then we need to have the B reporting, or we have in place B reporting analytics, right? Which reuse the information from the data warehouse, right? So this is our upstream on forward, let's say the domain where we see any data quality issue, right? Mostly these guys always need to find data quality issue firstly. And last but not least, I mentioned about these EUCs, which are widely used across the company on the business side and often take the data from data warehouse as well. And from, let's say, data privacy perspective, right? So GDPR, so we need this the data processing impact assessment in place, data subject access request, data processing register, global attention schedule. If in the company we don't have these elements, then we are not able to execute this right to be forgotten, which I mentioned before, right? And last but not least, everything should support some kind of capabilities like data governance infrastructure, aggregation, and the data reporting. It means that this data governance infrastructure means that we need to have dedicated bodies in place, some kind of meetings, discussions, council meetings, what we are doing, how we are gonna to address all the challenges, right? The data aggregation capability says that data must be correct, completeness, adequacy, whatever, right? Within all the data transformations which we are doing. And data reporting, that we need to be able to report the data in proper way. And by the way, this requirements come from something what we call BCBS, but obviously can be adopted by GDPR, DORA, Radar, you name it, right? Because if you want to do the business proper way, you need to have the policies, you need to understand how the data is aggregate through all this landscape, and then you need to report everything in proper way, right? If you consume the data in wrong way, that the reporting is corrupt and we report in wrong way. So far, so good.
That's great.
I have a question. Sorry.
Yeah.
Just
More than happy to answer any question.
yeah.
Just hit me.
In that architecture, abbreviation SLDC, what means?
Systems data lifecycle. I think I made type of system data lifecycle.
SDLC might be there.
Yeah, exactly. So it's this live, the commission stuff, whatever, right? And this is related not only to the system, but to the data itself as well. So sorry for the typo.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. And so this is high-level picture, and if you present that picture to, let's say, management board, maybe they will understand, maybe not, right? Depends on the knowledge across all these details. But anyway, this is high level, right? So everyone in company should understand that we have the some kind of regulation in place. We have the processes, reports, EUCs, taxonomy. So this should be not magic on the high level, even for management board to understand the details. And I'm saying that stuff because recently European Central Bank reused some kind of guidance that even the management board guys must understand high-level data information, right? So we need to teach them. They need to understand, let's say, this kind of landscape from high perspective and be able to link the dots. Why, for example, if we will have poor business processes, then we are not able to execute the DORA. Yeah, because DORA is purely linked to the processes, split by the domains, some kind of areas, right? Okay, so this is high-level battle plan, and this is how this should looks like from target perspective, right? And on that picture, so Maxim, I'm referring to your question before, right? You see, we have the flows, and then we have all this information stitched together. And explaining you, it goes like this: we have the process, and the process input the data to one of the systems, right? So we call that system flight. That's just example, right? Then the flight data goes to the Snowflake, right? In Snowflake, we have kind of KPIs, and then these KPIs are reused by this Snowflake product. This product can be called AGP, whatever. And then this product are used by the reports or some kind of models, right? And on the top, if you identify the data quality issues, so following let's say naming conventions, we can track the impact on the data forward, or we can backward trying to search the issue, or upstream or downstream. And Having additional metadata coming from these levels of the data lineage, right? You can stitch the information that this systems is the sales domain, right? Subdomain of business capability is order management and analytics. This should come from architecture. Then you can say that this flight system Snowflake sits into one of this CMDB repository and has unique ID as well, because each system has unique IDs. Then you can stitch the ownership for data quality or for the data element in place, or critical data elements. Then you can put the data classification on this, right, at the ABC, right? So open for everyone, closed for everyone, whatever. You can add PII, you name it, you can add everything. But obviously, if you have all this information in place, which should be collected through this lineage. So this lineage, this horizontal, this vertical lineage collect all required, let's say, metadata, and the physical lineage build the flow. You stitch together and you create the lineage, which is meaningful. Yeah, but anyway, this is kind of concept how this should looks like in the future. Obviously, it may look different way. Depends on the company capabilities, depends on the solutions, whatever, right? This is just example, but more or less that is the lineage. Questions? I hope I didn't scare you guys too much.
Impressive.
But this is what the regulators expect to see in the future, right? So this is why it's challenging. And I say, if this will be not done,
what regulator?
So in our case in Europe, this ACB, but I say this is just for the financial sector, right? If
Yeah,
you are not financial
central.
sector, you are safe, at least. Or maybe you are safe until GDPR control will approach you and then ask about the Article 17. So guys, you have in that report, I don't know, some kind of birth date. And there was a request to remove the birth date because Maxim wanted to remove his data from the systems. So please provide evidence that this your data, your birthday, was removed from each and every corner. That is Article 17. And currently in companies, that's hard to execute that stuff because nobody understands what happened here. Yeah, so we can remove here, sometimes we can remove here, we can remove here, but it's not fully transparent, right? So may happen that if you will get some kind of auditors, they will identify the gaps and you will land here.
Yeah, I would.
And you have to provide evidence that you removed.
Yep. So for Geneva element. So, but I said you can provide evidence. Yes, I removed from CRM, right? And then someone pick up the report and say, guys, I still see the report. So even if removed, but they still reported. Audit point.
And I would add my comment here is without data lineage, data spreads basically like a virus once it enters the system. So imagine personal data like and enters a system. You don't have data lineage, but you have like hundreds or even thousands of data transformations.
You see?
Yeah. So in exactly. At some point of time, this PII entry will spread across all your like hundreds or thousand systems. You will have no way to identify every possible system unless you define your data lineage at the start. So just at that particular moment when data enters the system, imagine like a website or like an ETL job. Once it's in the system, it has to be like tracked. Otherwise, the critical data will just spread like a virus. You will never be able to identify all the systems which contain and manage this data.
That's true. That's true. And obviously, if we are talking about the lineage, we should try to do that stuff in perfect way, but we are aware that it's impossible, right? So, but at least we'll be able to prove to someone, right, they're doing that stuff in proper way, then we are safe from regulation perspective. But obviously, it depends on us on which level we need to be the lineage, because at the end we should reuse the information, we should leverage to improve the business, right? So it's not for us, it's not for the regulators, this is to improve the business, right? Because if you understand how the data flow with the business, you can speed up activities, increase your ROI or whatever, right? So that is the goal. And from the battle plan, then we can go to executions. So as you see, I mentioned at the beginning that we have this data governance universe when we grab all the information coming from the CMDB database. Your CMDB database, so for example, ServiceNow, must be fully transparent and managed in proper way to create this kind of view. If it is done, then you can create something like this, right? So at least you get the information about the L1 or even L0 lineage, how, for example, information from one system go to different system, but on the finance area, the domain area, right? So for example, my data goes from finance to risk, done. First level the lineage, 0, 1 even, not on the process level. Then you can go to the medium level and try to understand what happened on that particular level, right? So you track on the system level, right? So in that case, you track across all systems, then you pick up one system and you track on the system level, right? So what happened with the data on the system level, how the data are aggregated, how the data flows, what is the transformation details. And once you go to that element, you can focus on some kind of particular small elements of the lineage, and you can jump to that view, right? And then, as explained on the previous slide about what kind of concept, right? There's real. Do you have the tables? We have the attributes. We have all these data quality rules. We have definitions. So you can exactly say that, okay, there is something like this portfolio here, for example, right? You click the portfolio, you press the focus button, and the lineage is built in an automatic way only for that element. So you can trace your element across the whole IT landscape. So this is this physical level. And by the way, this is how it is linked to data architecture model, right? Because having like this more or less simulate the data architecture model, right? So we could put even the data architecture naming conventions here and say that this is the key, primary key, secondary key, whatever you wish, right? You name it. But this means that on the data architecture side, we don't need to have the dedicated architecture model, physical one. We have that one. This is almost the same, right? And in that case, this view should be automated in more or less 75%. I mean automated because sometimes you need to make some kind of manual connections, or you need to add reports or some kind of reporting stuff, whatever. There is no option to make the automatization. So this should be at least done on 75%. That level should be done at 90% because you can import everything what comes from data warehouse, what comes from the source systems, whatever. And that lineage should be like the 95% because if you want to remap all the system in manual way, this mission impossible, right? So that is more or less the logic. Questions? Because now you see how to go from this high level into the low level stuff. Make sense? And last but not least, because now we're looking at the time, right? So 5 minutes left. So I would like just to have 5 minutes for some kind of question, guys, if you have. Then the last view is like this. From planning to execution. This is like everything on the one page. And sorry, this is not everything. This is just 10% on the big screen, right? But this is, we plan like this and we execute like this. And this is the essence of the data lineage, because let's say then on the data lineage, you may have everything. So you have the data quality rules, you have the definitions, you have some ownership, etc. Even if not perfect, right? So if you build the lineage, you can then improve the lineage for the next 2-3 years, adding additional information if missing, because for example, for all elements, we may not have the ownership. So this is like the journey. You need to implement and collect the required information to move forward. And that is the whole story. And guys, wondering if we can start like the discussion for the last 5 minutes, if there are any questions or some kind of thoughts. I know that it was complex, but that was the goal, because, you know, so I can create like the few bullet points and it means nothing. And now I believe that this is something what you can really touch, right? I know that it's complex, but it's possible to do. Hi, Maxim.
Yeah, I missed some blocks in this puzzle. To understand how we can approach like changes in time, historical tracking, change audit for data pipelines, maybe version control integrations.
It is in place. I didn't talk about because it is really details, but it is in place, right? So if you build the lineage, right, you update the information every day, every week, every month, depends what you need, right? and there's the version. So like the Git. So this is why I said at the beginning that if you have the change management process, you made the change, and you use this data lineage solution for that kind of approach, then, for example, if you want to double check 2 months later what happened before, you just switch previous version and you see before and after. So, and even moreover, using some kind of technology, you can track the metadata, right? And if the model will change because someone will upload new tables or the table name of the table will be changed, you can get notification that something's wrong. Because anyway, at the end, if someone will change the table, you'll land with a data quality issue. Yeah. So this is in place. I say so. I can talk for the next 2 hours, right? So more than 100 slides. Just wanted to encapsulate some kind of details and make some kind of storytelling from this universe, how to go from the universe up to this physical stuff, right? But I'm more than happy to discuss with you guys offline if you need any help, questions. I am here for you, for you here.
Yeah, this was a great presentation, and I remember actually I was working for a client. It was a public U.S. company. In public U.S. company, they're under the scope of Sarbanes-Oxley Act, which mandates that you maintain the integrity of financial reporting, and you should be able to kind of disclose this reporting.
Control.
Correct. Yeah. And at that time I wasn't working with data management, but now I realize how important it is to have proper data lineage for this, because you need to be able to tell an auditor, hey, this particular item was a result of series of data transformations. That's why it's valid, because in case you like do not maintain and fail to maintain this reporting integrity, like C-level executives basically go to jail because of that in the US. So imagine how important it is to have data lineage.
Yeah. So this is why I mentioned that even the ACB now, right, expect from this member boards that they will understand the data, at least the impact on the data, right? It's not like, oh, we have the data, just do it and that's all, right? It's not so simple. Yeah. But fully correct. So this is why I mentioned that this DORA, GDPR, BCPS, you mentioned about the SOX. Yeah. So we can name everything needs the same basic stuff.
Yeah.
If the basic stuff is missing, that the option to move forward with this regulations.
I may add comment from IT auditor perspective that data lineage is important in terms of information classification. It's like part of data lineage, as I understood, classification information. And if you don't know what information is critical for business from confidentiality, for example, point of view, you cannot select protection measures and decide what to protect and how to protect. So this important add value of data lineage.
Guys, another comments?
Hey, Piotr, I wanted to ask you how much effort have you put into your data lineage program to have those resulting screens of like complex data transformations and data lineage visualizations. So it does look scary, and that's why I'm asking.
Yes,
like,
it looks scary for everyone.
I can imagine.
Right?
I can imagine how much effort was put into it. So can you just
please try to guess
my
how
guess
much you will estimate? And
for
just
a
put the
bank,
numbers. Yeah.
for a bank, I'm not gonna give you like a really precise, but it seems
So
like
time and FTEs, right? So you have some kind of experience, right? So you can imagine that, like 2
yeah,
years,
like
or
tens of FTEs for like months or even years, I would say.
So 6 months, 4 people.
That's not a bad result, actually.
Yep, it's not at all. And so we need to create some kind of dedicated connector, right? So, and by the way, so this is not fully done, right? So this is not for the old system. This is just data warehouse with some salted systems, right? So I show in presentation a lot of these systems around. So this is not still done because I say this roadmap, and this is something what will take 3 years. But you need to have these fundamentals in place, right? If you have the fundamentals, agreed what we want to achieve, how we want to collect the information, then you just follow step by step to collect all the information. That's all. This is just time consuming. And in that case, yes, we may need a little bit more people because you need to, depends how fast you want to do that stuff, right? If you have 10 years, that 1-2 per people will be enough. If you want to speed up, then obviously you need to have the biggest team, right? But if you want to set up this, let's say the fundamentals, right? So it's not so scary, right? And someone told me, I remember from some kind of big bank in Europe, right? That we will not invest data Lineage because it will cost millions. And honestly speaking, is not true, right? It can be done faster and for smaller cost.
You can tell them to focus on the most critical data then, or maybe to just go one level of data lineage at a time. Just start with high level, business level data lineage, then.
Yeah. Exactly. So, but so even if you want to understand critical data elements, still you need to have this data unpack or the system. You need to understand something, maybe not table by table, but for the attributes. And obviously, if you just want to do the attributes by attributes, then you will do that stuff probably manually, right? Because you need to just put attributes on each and every system where it sits. If you just harvest the whole table's attribute schema, then you can do for everything, right? And if you harvest the whole schema from the data warehouse or from the system, you just put that these tables, these attributes, critical data elements, and you have the, let's say you have the grant to scale up in the future. If you start doing that stuff in manual way, as people sometimes doing, what is great anyway, because this is enough for the auditors, then you'll limit your opportunity window for the future. So always the best approach is just to create the connectors. In our case, because we have kind of legacy system, to, let's say, set up the connectors took a lot really time. But if you have some kind of modern technology which use API, it is like, so 1 month and you can connect one system. 1 month, so you can connect the next system, right? So like this, I believe.
Great. Okay. Any more questions from anyone? Maxim?
Well, yeah, one more question. How do you approach presentations for C-level executives to showcase efforts needed and tools needed? As, for example, some data teams start trying to develop own solution and
the same story. I'm just trying to provide some high-level information, right? What we have on the in that presentation, and then you need to try to explain that this is very valid for the people, and we have some kind of examples that shows that, guys, if this birthday at the beginning is, let's say, wrong, then you may land with 1 million additional cost on your reporting side, just to convince CEO that there's the impact, because the guys will not understand what happened between. They understand that if you have some kind of turnovers, whatever, right, incomes, and this drop down by 1 million, they are interested, right? And always the question is why this value dropped down by 1 million, right? And then you can explain it dropped down by 1 million because someone forget to put the birthday. And then, oh my gosh, so do you have the process in place? No, you don't have. Oh my gosh, so we need to set up the process. Do we have data quality rules? No, you don't have. Okay, let's build this. And this kind of story, right? But this is what we called in this data governance, data management, monetization, right? And I think DAMA tells the story as well. You need to find the example to explain to the people that if something is wrong, this shit happens. That is the best approach. And obviously, repeat the story, and deliver something, right? Because it's like in many companies, people promise to do something and then nothing happened, right? So they don't believe. But once people believe that there is the option to move forward, to do something, they start to support these activities. So that is our, let's say, strategy. And by the way, I have the great CDO, right? So who has the same way of thinking, very good communication skill. So I'm, let's say, doing the job, and my CDO is selling the job. So that is kind of
great team.
Yes, so this is very important, right? And probably if you look into some kind of forums, data forums, it will be said that this good CDO is really the essence of everything. And it's not about understanding given the data on a turbine level. This is about the storytelling and convince the people that this data is critical. Yeah.
All right, so we're kind of quite all over the time. So if you have any more questions, like feel free to send us via like email or just find us on LinkedIn. So Piotr,
Yeah.
thanks a lot for your
You're
amazing
welcome.
presentation. Amazing, totally beyond my expectations, honestly. So thanks a lot.
Good to hear.
Everyone from Poland, like who is not a member of DAMA Poland, please join.
I encourage.
That's
I would
one
even
of the
love to
amazing
join your
ways.
DAMA Ukraine. Why
Yeah,
not?
yeah.
So guys, as said, so if you would like to get more details, more than welcome. Oleg, Maxim, if you would like to set up next, let's say, kind of sessions, let's do it together. If you would like to present something for our DAMA Poland colleagues, feel free. Just provide some kind of topics and I will organize everything. Okay?
Thanks for the invitation. So
Welcome.
thanks everyone for attending today's webinar. See you later.
Thank you, guys. Bye-bye.
Have a great day, everyone.
Well, thank you.